If Lance rides one, it's gotta be good, yeah? Or is it? Grab some coffee, sit down, let's talk about it. Roll the intro. Hello everyone, how are you? This is yours truly, Diabetic Cycling, coming at you once again. Thank you for spending your time with me today. This episode is sponsored by my own damn wallet and brought to you by your engagement. So please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification so you can see these other episodes that are queued up. And please feel free to leave me any questions and comments down below in the comment section. As always, my goal here is to be transparent with no bias or any sort of agendas, and just regular normal guy that you're gonna run into out on the road, just sharing his opinions and thoughts. That's what this channel is about. I might have smoked you last week, you might smoke me next week. I'm nobody special, just my perspectives and opinions based on all the bikes that I've ridden and owned in the past, which serves as baseline for any bike review, including this one. All right, so company Ventum, I don't know too much about them other than that they are based in Utah, direct to consumer model. And the way I've got to find out about them was actually 3-4 years ago. I was watching the daily podcast that Lance puts out under his podcast umbrella, We Do. And he was mentioning how he was given a bike by Ventum, and I think they also, over the years, Lance and George, they had the owner, the founder of Ventum on the show during one of the stages and what have you. And then you would see Instagram posts of Lance and his buddies that are riding Ventum bikes. That's how I got to find out about them. I don't know really much afterwards. Of course, after the disgraceful exit from the entire industry, after him admitting to doping many years ago, of course, I could spend a lot of time on the whole Lance situation, but that's not for this episode. If you want me to make an episode about what my thoughts are on the whole Lance situation, do leave a comment and we'll see if that can be done. But anyhow, so after the exile from the industry, he had variety of bikes that he was seen on the photos that he was riding. I think I saw him riding a Specialized at some point. I think I saw him ride a Cannondale at some point. Of course, he no longer had any obligations with Trek. Then he also has a bike shop out in Austin, Texas, where he carries all these other brands. So I used to see him on all these different things. But then once the whole Ventum relationship happened, I don't know what the arrangements are between Ventum and Lance. But once that whole thing became public, you never see on social media Lance riding some other bikes. Now, during tour, like during the month of July when the tour coverage is happening by WeDo, you're gonna see Lance and George also riding the Ventum bikes, GS1 when they're on gravel and NS1 when they're on the road. And then that's a nice segue into Ventum's model lineup, which they have GS1 for their gravel offering, NS1 for their road racing. It's a smaller brand. They don't really have a wider variety, so it's not like they have a road offering that's all aero, road offering that's all super lightweight. It's just one bike that does it all kind of deal, which is the NS1 that I'm showing you today. And that takes us to my build. And now I did not buy the frame set from Ventum directly, nor did I buy a complete bike by Ventum. What I did was I had an opportunity to obtain this frame set, brand new frame set at a ridiculous price locally that was available. So I jumped on the opportunity thinking, because over the years, like I mentioned earlier, I was watching Lance's tour coverage and, you know, Ventum bikes were shown, and I sort of thought to myself, eventually, if an opportunity presents itself, it's not something I would go out and like aggressively hunt down to get one, but if an opportunity presented itself, I told myself I would hop on one, and that opportunity came. So I bought the frame set on its own to build up the way I would like, and the frame set does come with its proprietary seat post, which is kind of a D shape, the truncated camtail sort of a design, flat on the back and somewhat aero round D shape on the front side of the seat post. So the most uncommon bit of my build, which is unique to my build, of course, this is not how Ventum will sell it to you, so this is just this only applies to my bike, is the coefficient road racing bar, which looks like something out of this world. Of course, I guess in the year 2025, after you've seen a Cervelo's cockpit, and now you've seen, what is it, Y1R by Colnago, which is the aero bike that Tade is riding. That thing has like a wing design, and now this coefficient bar that I have, actually the hoods dip below the stem, so that's a little different, but anyhow, it looks like something out of this world, but I wanted to try it because some of you commented how I should give this bar a try many episodes ago when I reviewed another handlebar. So I got one at the time, and then I was looking for the right opportunity to see which bike I could put it on, and Ventum NS1 just seemed like as good as any to try it on, so I had the bar put on there. Now, this episode is not about the bar, so I'm not gonna spend too much time on it, so let's move right along. Size small frame that I have features 378 millimeter of reach with a 510 millimeter of stack height, and has 973 millimeter of wheelbase. So the numbers alone will tell you that the bike should handle very snappy. The bottom bracket is T47 threaded outboard kind, which I'm using a BB Infinite hybrid. They're steel and ceramic hybrid kind. And then the drivetrain is all Shimano Ultegra 12-speed Di2 affair, which came off of my Cannondale Super 6 Evo, which you'd have seen right here. And then again, it's sort of similar with the NV Melee. The frame set obviously is matte finish, does not have a glossy bit outside of the logo bits. So Ultegra's matte finish, I guess, works well with the matte finish of the frame set if you are one that cares about those sort of things. And then my crank set features 170 millimeter crank arm with the 50-34 front rings and then 11-34 in the rear. And for the most of the times that I tested Ventum NS1, it rolled on Shimano Dura Ace C36 in the front and C50 in the back. In terms of the appearance, I can't help but to think as I look at it, have I not seen this bike somewhere before? The way the seat stays are, way the head tube transition to the top tube and the bottom tube, down tube. I mean, it just seems like I've seen this bike somewhere before. It's very similar in appearance to some of the other bikes that are actively sold in the market today. And I don't know if that's because by the time the designers optimize the whole aero, the airflow and everything, maybe the results are the same, no matter which company you go. So maybe that's why the shape is very similar. Or is it because one company is paying too much homage to another? Or is it because one company is just ripping off the other blatantly? Regardless of what, I could not tell you why, but I can't help to think the bike looks very similar to some of the other bikes. The color is called Dove by Ventum. Now, I'm colorblind, so I should not be the one commenting on color, but to me, looks a bit off-white with a just ever so slight hint of pink, but I may be completely talking out of my ass, so don't take my word for it in terms of color, but that's what I see. And the matte finish with that light color predominantly, it's just magnet to show dirt, any sort of a stain, brake dust, whatever the grease that may accumulate during the build, maintenance, or even riding. It's just all very visible, hard to keep clean. There isn't anything weird or proprietary about the frame's design and appearance. There is nothing funky going on here. It's pretty much a straight forward type of a deal. So the build process did not present any sort of an issue. The tubes, like the top tube and the down tube, are all very squarish. So more square rectangular shape than circular round type of tubing. And then the while the frame has its stack height of only 510 mil, so it's very low and aggressive. However, because of the way hydraulic cables exit out of the head tube to go into cockpit, I was not able to slam my cockpit, meaning there's a bit of a spacers unlike some of my other bikes, which didn't bother me a whole lot. Like the NV Melee, that thing had a stack height of like 535, I forget what. So like adding 20 mil spacers here isn't gonna be a big deal. And as I get older, I am finding myself a little bit of a relaxed position does not aggravate me as much as it used to. Since I was not familiar, nor do you see this bike often on like pro tour events or any of the races, I did not know much about the bike at all other than aforementioned shots and photos on social media by like Lance's channel, what have you. That put me in a pretty good spot as someone that reviews bikes. I did not have any sort of a preconceived notion going in because it's really tough to review commonly available bikes because there would be these already established opinions and thoughts. I did not have any of that, so I went into this whole bike with just a blank sheet of paper, and you're about to find out. I will start with the geometry. As mentioned earlier, I gave you the stack, reach, and the wheelbase numbers, but those are so close to what I find myself ideal in terms of based on my height and my proportions. The bike just fit like a glove. So geometry wise, of course, your mileage is gonna vary based on your own body proportions and your build characteristics. So just because it fits me well, that doesn't mean it'll fit you well. However, me personally, I found the bikes fit incredibly good. The coefficient bar, which is unique to my bike here, again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this since it's not a stock build. I'll have a separate episode on the bar later, but the bar puts me in a really nice position, and amount of compliance that it has, now mind you, it is not as nowhere near as flexible as the Cannondale Momo Design handlebar R1 that I despise so much because that thing is just way too soft. This I felt has just the right amount of give to provide a compliant ride, while the width and everything just worked so well on this bike. The bike basically weighs the same as the previously reviewed bike ENG Melee on this channel, but the ride characteristics between the two bikes could not be more different. The bike rides incredibly agile. The snappy handling is just completely remarkable, allowing you in those situations when you have to make snap decisions, if you need to turn on a dime, the bike will confidently provide you with ability to do that sort of a maneuver. If you need to sneak up on someone from the behind and just mount a attack, just launching, propelling yourself forward, the bike can handle it plenty confidently. And then continuing on from that, the bike rides really eager, if that's a proper way to put it. And to give you some level of a context, this is how I would put it. I keep mentioning ENG Melee because that's the last bike that I reviewed on this channel. So ENG Melee rides like a fine racehorse that's gonna challenge you for the crown at the Kentucky Derby. Whereas NS1 rides with a slightly youthful energy than like a finely tuned racehorse. This thing still has a little bit of the wild horse sort of a personality, a little bit more of a nervous energy, but it's very eager. It may lack a bit of a refinement on some of the other established brands like the Tarmacs of the world and like the Melees, but it has this other characteristic where I feel like it's more eager to move forward and such. The front end, I need to spend some time on. Despite the coefficient RR handlebar providing plenty of compliance, I would tell you that the front end is very sensitive. What do I mean by that? You will feel everything on the road surface. If you so much as run over a dried up piece of chewing gum on the tarmac, you are going to feel it. If you run over a dead bee, dead butterfly on the road, you are going to feel it. The bike will make you feel and amplify any road imperfections. Now, I want to be careful. I'm not saying it is uncomfortable or non-compliant. I'm just saying you feel every pimple on the road. The rear end, on the other hand, is could not be any more different. It is very compliant. The rear triangle does its job absolutely perfectly, even when the road surface becomes rough and not desirable. Plenty comfortable for any long days out on the road. So on days when I'm rolling on something like Shimano Dura Ace C36 as my choice of wheels, the bike feels absolutely featherly, and ability to climb and tackle any sort of a local mountains, absolutely no issue at all. Obviously, bike's characteristics change a little bit once I go into something a little bit more deeper set of wheels. However, I want to say it definitely falls short of out and right aero bikes. I think I'm stating the obvious, but some bikes, despite the all-arounder moniker, surprised me in the past how well they handle on just out and out sprint effort, or just head down tucked in and just trying to slice through the air. This bike, I think, really sticks to the all-arounder moniker. I don't know if that's what Ventum is calling it. They just call it a road racing bike, but it does great on the climbs, it does fine on flats, really no issues at all there. The bike personifies youthful energy. The bike handles incredibly agile, and I keep saying nervous energy because of the way the front end handles, but it's a fun bike to ride regardless. Since modern day bikes are so well designed and so well made, really the difference between bike A to bike B from different companies, they're not going to be all that much different. So I always try to pay attention to what sets apart a bike from the other bikes, and this bike does have that in the form of, again, its ride characteristics. The appearance may be similar to some other bikes that we've seen. However, the bike definitely doesn't handle the way it handles in terms of how snappy it is, how agile it is, how the feedback is so evident on the front end. It definitely has its own personality. I don't know if it's necessarily a negative thing, but I will just point out for the sake of the video to be comprehensive. The way hydraulics exit on the head tube with the dust cap, out of the dust cap, way they protrude out, you can't really slam the cockpit, so you are forced to run spacers. I'm not as bothered. I don't know if I necessarily love it. It doesn't bother me, but that's something I should say regardless. And the next point in terms of cons and negatives, to me, the appearance on anything really doesn't bother me. The bike's primary function is to ride well. So long as one rides well, I don't really care what color or how it looks. None of that really bothers me. That said, like I mentioned earlier, the bike looks like it's another bike that I've seen before, maybe 2 or 3 other bikes out on the market. So to me, the appearance looks a little bit tired. And that leads us to the portion of the review episode where I pit the subject matter against some of the other bikes that I've owned and ridden in the past, which one I would rather choose. And to kick that off, this episode, we will go Orbea Orca versus Ventum NS1. Orbea Orca rides with a bit more refinement and it's a bit more polished, if you ask me. Orbea Orca takes it. Factor Austral VAM versus Ventum NS1. Now, the knock on the Austral VAM, for me anyways, is that it's a bit overpriced for what it is. Now, that said, I obtained my Ventum NS1 at an incredibly good deal. So if we are able to set that aside, the pricing differences aside, which one would I take? And I think I would lean towards the Factor Austral because I feel like it handles, both of them are all-arounders and both of them are, good bikes in their own right. I just feel like Austral is a slightly better bike when the road flattens out. Pinarello Prince versus Ventum NS1. Both bikes have some great things going for themselves as well as some things that are not necessarily that great. I don't think one rides overly better than the other. Here I would take the Pinarello Prince solely based on its looks, despite I said earlier I don't give a shit about how one looks so long as it rides well, but they both ride pretty well and one just looks a little better to me. Cervelo Soloist versus Ventum NS1, no discussion needed. Cervelo Soloist is a better bike to me. Ribble Ultra versus Ventum NS1. It is not an apple to an apple, like I always mention whenever this bike Ribble Ultra comes up in the conversation. I would just say if you live in Florida, you take the Ribble Ultra SLR because you got no mountains to climb. But if you live anywhere else, the all-arounder Ventum NS1 is a much better bike to have in your quiver. Against the specialized Tarmac SL8, you will have to wait for my three-way battle episode that I'm preparing, which is I'm gonna pit the Tarmac SL8 versus Ventum NS1 versus ENG Melee. Out of the three, I will just kind of do a battle royale there and tell you which one I like the best. Cannondale Super 6 Evo High Mod versus Ventum NS1. Ventum NS1 is just as springy as Cannondale Super 6 Evo High Mod, but it does that without its issues of the terrible handlebar with a slightly iffy balance issue that I find in that frame. So here, Ventum NS1 takes it. Canyon Ultimate versus Ventum NS1. I do love me some Canyon Ultimate because Ultimate rides so well, no matter anytime, anywhere. However, they both look a little bit tired to my eyes anyways. Because the Ultimate's been around with the design for like a decade, and Ventum NS1 just looks to me like another bike from different company. So here I would take the Ultimate. Trek Madone versus Ventum NS1. My Madone is the previous gen, so this would be an Aero versus all-arounder, much like the Ribble Ultra situation earlier. However, I will tell you that I would, in this case, clearly, despite mountains and what have you, I will take the Trek Madone over NS1. Canyon Aeroed, mine is a CFR, versus Ventum NS1. So my Aeroed CFR is the highest spec bike out of my inventory currently, and it's a great bike in its own right. Does have some things that I don't much care for, which you can see here in my review episode of it. Then again, the Ventum NS1 also has a few things that are just slightly annoying. So in this case, you sort of need to go with what you like. They are both fine riding bikes. Now, the moment you think, well, Matthew Vanderpool wins on Canyon Aero, so that's got to be a better bike. No, I don't agree with that one bit. Matthew Vanderpool would easily win just sheer power out of his legs, regardless of what rig he's riding. He can borrow the Y1 SR, whatever, from Tade and probably can win races just as the same. So what the pros ride really is irrelevant in this conversation. So that's not how I measure a bike, just because, seeing the tour races and see who's riding what. So in this case, if the bikes are configured similarly, let's say not instead of Dura-Ace on my Aero, let's say it's Ultegra. So if it's equally spec'd, I would probably lean towards Aero, because Aero, despite it being on quote-unquote Aero bike, it rides more like an all-arounder, and I feel that it does a better job on across the board than the NS1. Just by slight margin. And then that takes us to the final bike in this section, which will be the ENG Melee, but as I mentioned earlier, you would have to wait for my three-way battle royale. And to conclude, this is a bike I didn't know what to expect going in, since I knew nothing about this bike other than occasional photos, videos of Lance riding one. NS1 has great characteristics in being so eager to propel, and agility, and its springy personality. I can't help but to think that I'm riding a young stallion that's just not quite ready for the prime time at the Derby. Me personally, I don't love its looks nor hate its looks, but it does seem a bit tired because it looks so damn familiar. You hide that logo in the head tube and the down tube, you can easily have that mistaken for another bike, but who cares what a bike looks like so long as it rides well, and rides well it does. If you are one that favors a snappier handling rig that is versatile and also don't wish to see another guy on Saturday group ride riding the same bike that you have, this is a bike that definitely deserves a look. Or if you are just one that is a die-hard Lance fanboy and you just must ride the same thing that he's riding, then of course this is also a bike for you. And that wraps up for this episode. You've been awesome. I've been Diabetic Cycling. Keep the rubber side down, be safe out there, and most of all, be good humans. I'm out.